André Kertész, for me, is a phenomenal photographer. This little zine-sized booklet with the accompaniment of his exhibition of photographs at the Centre Georges Pompidou in Paris in 1979. It was published by the Arts Council of Great Britain. I am such a mega fan of André, and his work for me was so groundbreaking at the time. And he was, if you looked at his level of clients in the 30s and the 20s, he was phenomenally successful. He was shooting for Vue, he was shooting for Vogue magazine. He was just a phenomenal photographer. And this little sort of zine, a little catalogue, is sort of establishing his story, and it is establishing some of his images and some of the stuff he works at. And I'll try and give you an insight into some of them, but I just wanted to share this book. You can get this lovely little thing on the internet. It's not that expensive. Let's have a look at it. So it is 40 odd pages, 48 pages. Let's have a look. So Kertész, for me, his work was so influenced by so many different things, from Dadaism to the pictorialist photographers. He was a street photographer, he was a fashion photographer, he was high end as well, and he was an inspiration to people like Bresson, and he was in competition with the Irving Penns, and he was really up there as in the industry of photographers. And he reckons, and Kertész himself says, he wasn't acknowledged enough as a photographer, and he wasn't appreciated enough. I think he was incredible. And from very early on, there's one picture in here which I'll show you, which for me very early on was very influential in my understanding of design within photography. So this is 1914. This is when he was in Hungary. And this dialogue here is an insight into the sort of storyline of his life, I guess. And does it say who the... Let's go to the end and let's find out. Essay by Colin Ford, 1979, designed by Tom Eckersley. It was printed in England. And there's the sort of plate list here, works in the exhibition. So looking at the back shot, he was definitely a surrealist. He was really influenced in composition, in light, in changing perspectives. He loved, if you look at his Distortion series, where he was using 2 new models, 200 pictures of distorted, almost fairground style mirror images. I think there's some in here. He loved surrealism, he loved humour. For me, he was very much influenced by the pictorialists in terms of photographic realism and trying to make a beautiful imagery, especially with his light work. And it was in the same period, just coming out of the pictorialist phase, moving into the heavy style documentary phase of America with the FSA. And 1915 was that sort of period where documentary photographers were being sort of, were coming around to be part of the industry, and obviously really cementing themselves with the onset of the Big Depression around the end of the 30s. So let's have a jump here. Okay. So this is Friends, September 3rd, 1917. It's beautiful, isn't it? Let's go down. He's so ahead of his time. This shows, 1917. This is documentary photography, isn't it? It's beautiful, and this is landscape photography. And he's even then, 1925, long exposures, really understanding light and composition, and how light and composition works together, and beautiful as that is, it's stunning. And it's this is his street photography work, and he's so much a street photographer. And this is I think he's living in the artist quarter of Paris, and this is in the 30s. Again, you know, candid portraiture is amazing. Now this shot here, the Meudon, for me was a really interesting opener for composition for me, and started to understand how photography worked in different planes, on the foreground to the background, to what would happen 5 minutes before the train came and 5 minutes after the train. His sense of depth of field, the stories, the narratives within the frame. Where's the train going? Where are the guys going? What's this guy got in his hand? What's going on over there? The composition, the rule of thirds. It's a phenomenal picture. It's 1928, and one of the first pictures I actually was given at university to analyse, and that was a long time ago, but it's absolutely a real opener of discussion, this shot, for narrative and composition, and it's a very important picture, and it's a picture which, one of the pictures I always relate to Kertész being this sort of shot and the influence it had on me. And I don't know, it was a very important beginning for me, looking at this type of shot and understanding how things come together. Now this stuff here, this is Evening Square, Paris 27, and that's Crossroads, Bios or Blois in 1930. I have a feeling, I'm sure he was influenced by Alvin Langdon Coburn, the pictorial photographer. I'm sure, because a lot of his work is based on light. A lot of Kertész's work is based on light, and a lot of it is comes off this high, elevated view with abstract elements to it. And Alvin Coburn was one of the first photographers in this, I think, the pictorialist movement, who started looking at composition and light from elevated viewpoints. I think he did the Octopus, which he's really famous for, and that was about 1912. So it wouldn't be uncommon that somebody like Kertész was influenced by this elevated composition aspect, and I definitely think he was. I think it comes out in his work a lot, and I think the pictorialism, I think the surrealism, the Dada side of his influence comes out, as well as his basic street photography, his understanding of composition, his understanding, you know, of the decisive moment, and the patience and the deliverance of this shot is phenomenal. Everything about it is just phenomenal. And this is 1930. So for me, yes, Alvin Langdon Coburn is definitely, for me, a real influence in his work. And it's the decisive moment there totally. And he's and even this with the street lamps, it's a decisive moment as far as I'm concerned. It's beautiful. I'll get onto this one in a minute, because I'm fascinated with this shot. But this series here this is the Distortion Series I may have mentioned earlier. And this was a series of shots with two girl models who he photographed for a book. I think it was a commission. It might have been somebody like Vu or somebody like that, the magazine, which commissioned him to do this originally. I might be wrong. But I think it was Paris Vu. Anyway, so that was a series of images which became a book, Distortion. And it's 33, and for me, I don't know about you, but there's a sort of Bill Brandt resemblance there, and I wonder if Brandt took something from this himself. This shot, right, bearing in mind this is 1917, and it's an underwater swimmer. This is an advertising shot. This is a swimwear advertisement. I think it's just so ahead of its time. And look, you can see the swimwear. I think it's an amazing shot. And it's 100 years old. and it's an advert for a swimwear magazine. I just think it's so ahead, and so his vision was so ahead of its time. And we started seeing stuff like this in the 60s and 70s, didn't we, with advertising and magazine adverts and stuff like that. And I just think it's beautiful. Here's that, again, that elevated viewpoint. It's quite a surrealist shot. This is very surrealist. This is almost like a Dada style surrealist shot, isn't it? It's got that elegance to it, and that beauty to it, and that question to it, which you would ask in a surrealist shot. And I think this is as well. I think this is very, very surreal, but beautifully composed, beautiful, decisive moment. This is what I think is street photography coming into play again. Oh, this is just phenomenally beautiful. 1928. This shot here is Chez Moderne, 1926 Paris. This is a simple shot. Well, there's a lot to this shot. This was Piet Modrine's house. He was invited, I think, to his studio, and he wanted a shot which symbolised a lot of the things with the way Piet and the symmetry Piet uses in his work. Hence it's called Chez Moderne, which is house of, and then Mondrian. And I think this is his sort of ode, if that's the right word, to Mondrian, in his way of looking at the symmetry, looking at the lines, even with the curves and just everything, the light, it's beautiful. And I think this was his sort of, he was giving this picture to him in a way, as sort of say, this is for you. I might be wrong, but it's just my view. But it definitely was in the Mondrian studio. If anybody's familiar with Piet's work, then you might get what I'm talking about with all of this sort of lineage and stuff, and the lots of rectangles and square-sided shapes going on here. It's beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. And this is just beautiful. This use of space. Again, it's for me, it's very, very Dada-ish again. And there's some understanding of the composition, lines, light. It's probably for a fashion magazine or something like that. It's just fantastic. This is going back to that humour. This is now 1962. Now, I wonder if Bresson is having an influence on him now, because Bresson was influenced by Kertész, and in 62, Bresson was like out there, and I wonder if it worked, because this is a definite humour, questionable street shot in the moment, and almost like there's a lot of narrative going on there with the composition here, the composition there. It is fantastic, and it feels like it's a Leica as well. I think there's a dual influence with Bresson here, definitely. This is just, I mean, I keep mentioning people like Brian Griffin all the time. I just see this as a Brian Griffin shot. I know you might think I'm crazy, but for me, I wonder if Brian Griffin looked at this many years ago and was like, just such an influence to me. I just see there's a sort of surreal quality what I see in Brian Griffin's work, which I'm seeing in this shot. And this was 1948. Brian came a lot later, and I'm sure he's well read up in Kertész's work as well. I love this. Isn't this fantastic? This is 1929. This is Paris. For me, going back to what I was saying about Alvin Langdon Colburn's work, for me, the Octopus is all here. Isn't this just phenomenal? This is 1954, 1966. He is obviously obsessed with elevated views, and this is very much the same area where Alvin Colburn was shooting, and there's such a beauty in the abstract elements of it. It's just fantastic. Again, here we go again. That humorous street photography reportage, and the landing pigeon Oh, it's just sublime. Sublime, sublime. I think this is more an ode to Piet Mondrian. It's just essence. Oh, it's just fantastic. Isn't it wonderful? What do you get out of looking at that? What do you learn from looking at something like that? Does it make you want to get out and think about shapes, patterns, the decisive moment, forward, back planes, lighting, contrast? It's just got everything to make you think in terms of composition. Again, you know, let's look at contemporary photographers, Tom Wood and Marlowe's and all of them. This is moving into the 70s now, you know, and there's a certain influence there with contemporary photographers at that time and that abstract element to the work. Look at the composition, though, isn't it just superb? But I don't know. I love the quality of it. It's so modern. And then you look at something like that, 1926. It's brilliant. Look at that. That's Tokyo, 1968. This is more that, you know, 1941. But look at this, the shadow of the boy. It's very surreal again. And again, just ended off a bit of humour, a bit of surrealism, a bit of everything really, and you got the little bird on there. I think that's a bird, isn't it? And right part of the roof. I just think it's a great observation. And the puppy, 1928. This little book brings me so much joy. It really does. And you can learn so much of it. You know, 40 pages here. When I spotted this, I got it straight away. I get so much pleasure out of understanding, trying to understand some of the stuff that's in here. Go out and search for his work. Fantastic. Thank you.